Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
Well, welcome to our show. Today, we're continuing a conversation we started earlier this year, focusing on women in tech and what men can do to facilitate equality and the advancement of women. I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter, and today I'm enjoying a nice, dry French rosé. I found you can drink it any time of the day. And so it's really my go-to wind down drink of choice. Amanda, what are you drinking today?
So I am on water today. I have to rehydrate again. It's been a rough week and it's only Wednesday. So there we are. Anyway, but let's dive into our guest and not even dwell on that. So it is my honor to welcome and introduce Eva Helén for part 2 of her Wind Down Wednesday conversation with us. Eva is an entrepreneur with 20 years of experience in the tech field. She's also the founder of EQ Inspiration, which offers programs for men and mixed groups in tech wishing to help advance women and minorities in the workplace.
Eva, welcome back to Wind Down Wednesday. We're excited to have you back and talk more about your book and that conversation we started earlier this year. But first, I've got to ask, what's your beverage of choice today?
Okay, so it's going to have to be a double espresso.
Still drinking those. Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, you mentioned that in the last one, so I'm impressed that you're still with that. So good.
No, but I'm serious. We're in this house here where I live with my family. We're very serious about our coffee. And occasionally I'll go with an oat milk cappuccino, but I tell you, a double espresso beats pretty much everything.
Agreed. Especially to give you that little afternoon lift. So wonderful. So Eva, if you don't mind sharing with us, in the first episode, we talked about your book, Women in Tech, a book for guys. So guys, for you. And we discussed the 7 male prototypes that emerged in your research. If you don't mind, let's continue that conversation about the prototypes and how you see men using your book or the models that you presented to actually advance women.
So the reason that I thought it was a good idea, or it kind of just came to me after studying all the research that I had done with all these interviews with men, particularly in tech and tech-related industries, was that I started to understand, also by talking to them, that the message that was being delivered to them during trainings or workshops didn't always suit them. Very often they felt like they were tuning out already before the presenter was getting into the real material. Something just didn't appeal to them. So as these 7 character prototypes emerge, I thought, well, of course, you can't very well. If you have a new sales team, for example, or you're a manager of a sales team, you have some new employees, you have some that have been there for a long time, you can't coach them all the same way. If you are a parent and you have a couple of children or more, you know that if you want to get them to the same kind of finish line, you have to coach them along differently because they're all different. And so I thought, well, that makes sense. I can't deliver the same message to all of these men. What I think the commonality is that nobody likes to be told what to do, because I don't like to be told what to do. So what I did in the book is, as I present these 7 character prototypes of men, is I introduce different ways for each one of them to support women and minorities directly or indirectly. And I'm not proposing to them what to do, but I'm simply sharing what other men at the character prototype level above theirs are already doing. That's it.
Would you mind sharing with the audience before we move on the actual 7 and how they came up with their names?
Yes. So at the top, we have the 3 advocates, Mark, James, and Samir. Mark, originally, I got the idea for the name from Men Advocating for Real Change, which is an organization out of New York. James is he's a change agent. He changes the culture of the organization. He works with entire teams. So if you're an agent, you're a James Bond. So therefore his name is James. Easy. Samir really got his name because I needed a good name that also didn't feel like a white guy's name that started with an S. So Samir was the first thing that came to mind. Okay. Memo sounds like mentor. So now we're moving into the 3 under. So the top 3 are the advocates. The next 3 are the allies. And the allies are Memo, Memo, Al, and Cree. Memo is a mentor who mentors women one-on-one. And so I needed a name that started with an M. And my husband's nickname is Memo. So I asked him, is it okay to use your nickname? And would you like it in the book? And he said, yes, I would like that very much. Now, he's not a Memo, he's a Samir, but it gets a little complicated. The next level is Al. He's the happy-go-lucky ally, the typical ally, the one who desperately wants to support and help, but has absolutely no clue where to start. We love him. He's very receptive, shall we say, to the message. And his willingness to help is great. So if you give him just small things to do, small ideas, it's really easy for him to implement them without taking any extra time out of his workday. So Al is ally. That's where that came from. Cree was an interesting one. He's the only person who actually, or a character prototype who actually changed names a few times throughout the process of writing the book. It came from, I wanted to call that category the convincible resistance. So Cree is the person who, when you start to talk about these topics of diversity and inclusion, tends to kind of withdraw, not because he's not interested, but he gets a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. And so I wanted a name with a C and an R in it. And Chris was pretty common among my interviewees, so I couldn't use that. And then we had another name for a little while, but then we landed on Cree because I thought it was such a special and different name from where I come from. Yeah. And then finally, at the bottom, the 7th character prototype is Richard. I'm sorry if some people find it offensive. It's meant to be taken a little bit as a joke, but his nickname is often used in the context of being somebody who is not aligned with the general efforts and somebody who is a little bit opposed to change, shall we say.
We use the name Richard around my office quite often to describe things, so no worries.
That is too funny. That is too funny. I absolutely love those. I've done this work for 20 plus years, and being able to put people into those places, or quite frankly, have them self-assess almost into those places, I think is phenomenal. As we kind of want to, I can't go deep into each of the 7, but you made a statement in your book that all men can do better at supporting women. You know, if you had to cut across, maybe we'll go with the top 6. What's one thing that those men could all do for our listeners? What would be that one thing that might cut across those top 6?
I think the easiest one is always to ask, how can I help? And it is a very, so as I was explaining in our last episode, was that the allies are still a little bit self-conscious and a little bit focused on themselves. What if I say or do the wrong thing? What if I support somebody and it's going to affect my career? Anything like that. The advocates are very focused on other people. But even for the allies, when they're in a one-on-one conversation with a woman, maybe it's even somebody who they know really well, somebody on their team, but they don't know them very well. It is not that difficult, even for that person to say, hey, how can I help? When you're an advocate and you're at the top of this matrix, the how can I help might be because he's tuned into a situation that nobody else has noticed. So it might be a more delicate matter or a more difficult topic. Or how can I help? The answer to that might be, well, I'd love to work for you as a boss, but the culture of this company is very difficult for me. So then that advocate finds himself having to start addressing the culture of the team or the organization, which is not something that we can ask an ally to do. But so how can I help you is common across all of those 6 categories.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. So what advice would you give to a middle manager who wants to help advance women? Maybe they have not read the book yet, so they can't self-select if they are a Mark or a Richard or where in the spectrum that they fall. But what advice would you give to them if they just don't know where to begin?
I would suggest take the self-assessment or read the book, because the thing is that it doesn't, the different character prototypes are not at all in any way tied to the level you're at on the hierarchy of your organization. Mm-hmm. So you can be an individual contributor and be a Mark just as well as, unfortunately, you can be the CEO of a company and be a Richard.
Absolutely.
So there's no connection. I've not been able to find any kind of pattern. I'll find the same amount of Richards at the entry level professionals as I find at the top. However, the majority of the people in my research end up in the CRE and AL categories. So the bottom part of the allies. And so if we assume that this middle manager who you're talking about is an AL or a CRE, and they're thinking about how can I actually get more women onto my team or into my organization, they may not even be ready for that statement. AL probably is. He's saying, sure, I love to work with women. They're great. I want to bring more onto the team. The first thing he needs to do is go to the women who he already has on his team and ask them about their experiences. If there are things that are really good that he can talk about when he interviews other women, if there are things that are not so good, so that he can actually start to address those.
You know, I love, in closing, that the names you picked, and I'll bounce this off Amanda for a second, kind of millennial sounding, right? Memo and Cree, you know, these are not old white guys. I like the jazz, you know, that puts out. So with that, you know, we never have enough time. So we want to thank you for joining us today. And if you want to hold your book up, please, for our people who are coming to our website to see the video portion, you'll find out more information about Eva, her work, and her book, Women in Tech, on her website, eqinspiration.com. We're going to post that in our podcast and also on our website. But I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us again. The message is so relevant, and we just need hundreds and hundreds of people talking about how do we create more male allies and advocates. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us for Wind Down Wednesdays, a contemporary midweek discussion on current workplace and marketplace issues with a focus on diversity, inclusion, intersectionality, and equality. I'm Amanda Hammett, and on behalf of myself and Jeffrey Tobias Halter, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.